Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, where we'll have a spring game. I think,
yeah.
Are we going to have a spring game?
What would that look like?
I mean, we're going to have a show. We could have a show on a random Saturday in April, like a normal show, like we would on a Saturday. Like we do a Saturday night show in April, like we would in September or October.
And then we also test
just like all the other ones.
All the concepts that we've talked about behind the scenes and see if they work. And if it doesn't matter because it's not a real game.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, other podcasts might be tampering. They might be looking to see if some of our, down the line, like stuff we do in like minute 45 of the show, like, is that something they want to steal and put in minute 1 of their show?
Yeah. Andy, help me out with this. Like, this has been 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks of discourse. And I think it's really, I can't tell if it's stupid, but I know exactly what this is. It is a new way for coaches to complain about tampering. All they've done is just repackage the tampering conversation. And isn't that what this is? Like, there's nothing revelatory about the spring game, right? I mean, and I guess like
there is nothing revelatory about any spring game. Nothing.
I mean, I've covered 20 spring games in my life, and I don't think I've ever left a spring game feeling like I found out something today in a huge way about a player who's going to be great that nobody already was anticipating was going to be great. Like, people know already who, when you walk into the stadium, you know who you're there to watch.
Yeah. The only time I've gone to a spring game and come away with like a massive takeaway, I remember the last year of Brady Hoke at Michigan. Went to that spring game. I was like, this is not going to go well.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
I think at a spring game, that's exactly right. You get a sense for when things aren't right, but you don't really get a sense for what a team's ceiling is, right? Like, yeah. you kind of know what a good team spring game looks like, but it's never excellent. And here's the other thing. How many players have awesome spring games who don't do anything in the fall? Like, I think that's very common. So, like, when you talk about this whole thing of, like, we're not going to do the spring game because we don't want people to swoop in at the end and take players that they didn't know about. 1, they already know about it. And 2, just because somebody has a good showing in the spring game doesn't necessarily mean that they're worth 3 times more than they were than before the game started. So, like, again, to me, like, I've thought about writing about this. Pete's been all over it. It's like, what's the thing here? And, like, you know what the best thing that happened about this is? Dabo said something, and I agreed with him.
There you go. Let's hear what Dabo Swinney said. So Dabo Swinney talked about this on Tuesday. Clemson is going to have a spring game. Now, it may not be televised, but I'll get to the television part of the spring game thing in a second, because I think that's a separate conversation from the tampering thing and everything else. But here's what Dabo said, and I quote, "We're going to have a spring game, and I hope we can have some type of fan day with it as well. I don't know. We'll see. Listen, whether you have a spring game or not, it's going to be tampering. Ain't nobody going to look at the spring game and go, oh, yeah, boy. They got PFF. That's called PFF. They've got everything on everybody. Canceling the spring game ain't going to stop tampering. We're going to need a lot more help than that to stop tampering, and hopefully at some point that'll happen." So that is what Dabo said about it, and he's right. As far as the spring game is, now look, I don't care if you have a spring game or not. Like, if you do the Grove Bowl like Ole Miss did, where essentially they did what the NFL has done with the Pro Bowl, that's fine. Oklahoma is having a kind of fan fest thing where they're going to be players and coaches doing combine type drills, and but they're also going to get the fans closer to the action, to the players and the coaches. Like, if you have some sort of celebration of your football program in the spring that allows people to come in the stadium and interact with your coaches and players and get a sense of who they are and, fall more in love with them, that's all you need to do. Because the spring game, let's be real, the spring game wasn't going to tell you much. Like, Ari, you and I have both been to spring scrimmages that are not open to the public. They look very different,
far more
than spring games.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that's where the competition for positions happens. That's where you figure out who's really going to be helping them the next year. Like the spring game,
each other, like really hitting each other. Yeah.
Yeah. The spring game's not like that. It's much more a celebration and a chance. Like you said, how many players have blown up in a spring game and you never see them in the fall? It's a chance to celebrate those walk-ons and those guys who bust their ass for little credit, little publicity. This gives them a chance to do it in front of a crowd. Like that's what they are for the most part. And then let's add the other piece to it. These guys are getting paid. You have somebody tear an ACL in your spring game that doesn't count, who's expensive. You've just wasted all that. You flushed it down the toilet.
Right. So the only thing I'm precious about when it comes to spring games is the celebration aspect. And you nailed that. Like, I feel like, and I've heard this for the last 15 years. Doug Maurice is always big on saying this. I say his name a lot on the show. I'm sorry. But it's like fans are being priced out of the event now. Like, and it's not just college football.
The games themselves, especially the better games with dynamic pricing. Yes.
Who's the country singer that's like, I'm not a country guy, but my wife's really into it, who's kind of overweight, but really famous?
Luke Combs.
It's not him, but there's a country singer that my wife wants to see.
Jelly Roll.
No. That guy's, is that a country's artist?
Well, hip hop to country. He's country now. He was hip hop.
Whatever it is. It doesn't matter who it is, but like my wife wanted to go, and tickets are $1,500 each. And like, you had the Taylor Swift experience yourself and your family. Like, events are expensive. So like, to me, the ability to pay $5 or $10 to go to the stadium, take your kid there if you are priced out of the events, and connect with the program is a really huge deal. And I feel bad about that. But I don't feel like holier than thou as it pertains to watching them play 11 on 11, especially considering the fact that rules have like 10 years ago, like in 2010, 2013, like they actually drafted teams and played games where there was like a competition where the backup quarterback was on one team, the quarterback was on the other. They, the best receiver was with the backup, and they split it evenly and they played a game. Now it's like half contact. There's no kickoffs. Like, they're not even playing the game anyway. So like, if you can invite, and what Ohio State did when I was on the beat, which I thought was nice, is they would have a student appreciation day, which was opening up the football facility and allowing students to come into the football facility on the practice field and like circle around the team as they ran like good on good. And like that wasn't televised, and like, but students can come and like actually see the players. And like anything that you can do to bring kids, to bring people into your stadium that otherwise can't go when tickets are $500 a piece or whatever in the regular season, I think is a really important thing. But as it pertains to tampering and, Connor Stalions up in the second deck like this, looking at your third string left tackle, like that's just a contrived storyline because coaches love nothing more than complaining about tampering. And like, when it comes to tampering too, like I feel like it kind of sucks. Like, I'm with the fans on this. Like, I don't love the idea that if you have a good player on your team and you're Louisville, you got to like be shaking in your boots at night before you go to bed every night because you're afraid someone's going to steal them. I think that stinks. And I hope that with this revenue share and contracts and employment situation, we can get to a place where players, sign an agreement, are locked in for a few years with the place that they chose. But until that point, it kind of reminds me of like the steroid era in baseball. It's like, just legalize it. Just let everybody take roids, and whoever does the best, and this isn't a health risk. This is e-commerce. You can contact anybody whenever you want about anything, and you can try, and just like, that's football. Like, it's already off the rails anyway. So instead of bringing it, like making this in the shadow of my agent calls your agent, who calls your barber, who calls your uncle, who has, 3 girlfriends in the Caribbean who are funneling you. I don't know what the hell's going on, but like, just do it. Like, everyone's doing it anyway, so just legalize it so they can stop complaining about it, because I'm kind of tired of hearing about it. And
do you think they can't quite quit this because they can't get away from the old under the table stuff? Like, there was too much of an economy built up around that. Like, those people can't just fade into the background.
I mean, I have a theory too that like in the future, and I don't know, there's probably tax benefits to paying the players for the person who's paying, but I wonder if like we're going to get back to under the table once everything is reformed.
Not if they have a CBA, because like in the NFL, if you do under the table, the CBA has some pretty harsh penalties.
Rules.
Yeah.
But also too, if you're dealing with an 18-year-old who's making X number of dollars, and on his trip, someone says, "You come here and you sign your agreement with my school, I'll grease you for $1,500 a month under the table," then you don't have to pay taxes on that. Like that stuff can probably still happen. Like, and also too, as we're getting removed from it, like like you and I have had this discussion before, but like as it pertains to cheating, like on one hand, I think it's deplorable and it's like really, really hard to find stuff funny. Like we ran into this during the Connor Stallions Michigan stuff a few years ago when we were doing the show together. It's like you thought it was hilarious. And I thought that it was kind of terrifying, because if you put yourself in a position where you can break rules to that extent and everyone thinks it's funny, then we're going to lose the plot. But at the same time, too, it's like part of the charm of the sport.
He was a failed vacuum cleaner repairman, Ari. That's funny.
First of all, I watched the documentary, and the fact that that wasn't even mentioned is an utter failure. Like,
because the documentary was very pro Connor Stallions.
Because all
his
that
failure as a vacuum cleaner repairman is a black mark on his record.
Like, has anybody gotten to the bottom of what those were? Was it just a way for him to accept and receive Venmos from people without being like, was he like using it to like launder money into his account from his account?
I hope so.
Like, because I can't imagine that somebody who's sleeping at a truck stop, in the middle of the night in his car had a lot of time to, get into the middle of a Dyson and clear it out. So, anyway, off track a little bit, but I think that like part of the charm of the sport to a certain extent is like, how far will your shady people of your fan base go to get the 4-star safety? Like that's kind of fun. But it's not fun to the teams that can't compete in that realm. But it is kind of also funny to me, and I'm rambling, but it's a podcast, you can deal with it, that the SEC was better and more efficient at cheating in the past, and now it's possible that the northern teams in the Big Ten and stuff can pay over the table, and like now they're getting smoked.
Yeah, there's a whole like AP American history, industrial age versus agricultural age essay to be written here.
Yeah, that's kind of what's happening here. I mean,
but as far as the spring games go and the tampering and all that, I think we are on the same page. Like, and I think you put it very well. Give the people who are priced out of Saturdays in the fall a chance to get their kid in the stadium, a chance to get their kid 5 feet away from their favorite player. Like, can you imagine a South Carolina fan? Somebody lives in so like me as a kid in Columbia. Now, I got to go to a couple of South Carolina games because it wasn't as expensive as it is now. But at the time, my mom was single. Like, she's a high school librarian. Like the way the tickets cost now, we would have really struggled to be able to go to a game. So like the 5-year-old version of me now would not probably be able to go to the South Carolina LSU game last year or to the South Carolina Ole Miss game. But imagine
people too that live an hour away and might need to stay the night or whatever.
Yeah, but imagine
that have a travel element to it.
Imagine that kid in April gets to go be 5 feet from Lenora Sellers because they have a fan fest or that sort of thing. That's just as valuable, because if that kid, when that kid grows up, he'll want to go to school there, and if he goes to school there and he's successful, he'll have some money, and then maybe he's donating some money to you in the future. Like, that's the sort of thing you're winning hearts and minds more than anything else in the spring. And you don't have to win hearts and minds with a scrimmage. You can win hearts and minds other ways. But I hope that, and this gets into something that I think college football in general, especially big time college football, is really bad at. They are really bad because the coaches are so freaking paranoid at letting their fans fall in love with the players. Like, get your players out there. Let people see them. Let people talk to them. Let them do interviews. Like, and the NIL era has helped this a bit because the players are like, hey, look, this helps my brand. I'm going to do it. I don't really care what you say. But you're running an entertainment product. Like, these are your stars. Stop acting like they're not.
Yeah. In the spring, Ohio State, when I was on the beat, like very rarely made freshmen available. They made them like when they first arrived, when they signed,
Mm-hmm.
and then like they would go a year without talking to the media, especially if they weren't playing. And then on their spring student appreciation day, like that was a day where reporters could just go up and talk to people, whoever they wanted. And it's like, and I'm sure like the top 15% of the sports kind of like this, but if there's a 5-star tight end who came to your school in the previous class and didn't play his freshman year, like everybody's locked in on like, what's up with him? You know, like people, the future is always the thing that drives people. So like that to me was a very valuable aspect too for the media standpoint. Like the open locker room thing at the bowl game, the spring game appreciation day, and then early signing period was huge on that beat. But yes, I'm 100% with you. And I think that, you know, it is kind of an interesting thing of like when you look at the big picture, like that thing that you said is perfect. It's like that 6-year-old is going to be an 18-year-old one day who may want to go to your school, and then he might, you know, he
might be a 35-year-old who's coming to some money who might want to give to your school.
Might strike Bitcoin if that ever, you know, gets to where people think it's going, you know, and then next thing you know, you have somebody who's paying your NIL. I don't know. Can I go back to something? Because somebody in the chat is kind of, you know, jawing at me a little bit about the SEC Big Ten comment, because I think it's kind of important.
Absolutely.
The Big Ten never paid their players. Not what I said. I said that the SEC was more efficient.
He said the SEC was better at it, Zach.
And
the SEC was better at it.
Yeah, I think that it's possible to think that like maybe Indiana wasn't really
like. Look at how bad Ohio State was at paying their players. They got caught every single time.
Yeah. Also, the rankings don't even match that insane idea. 70% of the top 10 in the SEC is still the rankings don't have to change for the composition of the country to be different. If the number one class in 2019 was Alabama because they had 14 top 100 players in it, and the number one class has 7 top 100 players in it, that still means that the sport's different. So like really look into that for me. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I do love that. It is funny because I always laughed at Ohio State. Like they got caught for the stupidest things.
You know what
the part I found hilarious about that was nobody in the SEC would ever get caught for that stuff.
If I could go back in time and know one way or one thing about Ohio State, it's how they got Terrell Pryor to go there.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a
hell of a story.
Because something had to have happened, right? I mean, he was like the number one all-world recruit. I mean, he was like the Arch Manning before Arch Manning existed without the name recognition. And he could have gone anywhere. Like something.
And he had a guy. Like
Yeah. So that to me, that was something that was, and you know, he was at the center of the Tatgate stuff, and you know, I think as time has gone on, he looks less and less egregious for what he did because apparently, or not.
Well, none of the Tatgate stuff was egregious. Let's be real here.
But I think that like I'll never forget the day that all that stuff broke. The day that SI had the How Deep It Went SI cover. Jim Tressel had a team meeting at the Woody
he rigged a raffle, Ari.
He did rig a raffle. What was the prize? I don't even remember what the prize
was.
was.
It was some shoes.
It was. And I remember Terrell Pryor showed up in a 350Z, which was in 2010 was an awesome car. Like it's like that was like you were the man if you had that car. And everyone.
But it's interesting now to like go back. Like it was a gently used 350Z. It wasn't even a new one.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at the dollar, like the fact, like Carson Beck just had a Lamborghini SUV and a Mercedes stolen from him at the same time. So we're different universes now.
But still, to show up in that car, because at the car, was, at the time, it was viewed as a fancy car for an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, whatever he was. Kind of illustrated some sort of lack of social awareness, you know? And I think that like that has generally kind of just been the thing with Terrell. Like it's like people thought that he was shady. And maybe nothing happened. I don't know. But like I would love to know like Ted Sarniak's actual role in that whole thing and how they got him there. Because it's like Ohio State has cheated before. It has got caught, but I'm sure that they've cheated and haven't gotten caught too, like at times. So like, and I think that everybody cheats. So, but that's the one thing that's like, if I could go back, my Valhalla of like stories, I wish I could know the real answer to, that would be the one.
I want the whole Albert Means story. And I realize a lot of the Albert Means story came out, but then the booster who was accused of funding it, falls down the stairs and dies. Like there's a whole lot. It was an Alabama case. I would love to know the full story behind all of that.
And I think we know another one too. This will be a fun podcast. Sorry, hijacked again, but Swamp Kings. I'd want to watch Swamp Kings, but like the actual story.
Yes. We're all of the rumors. I'm not even gonna say the rumors that went around Gainesville at the time because I have no idea if they're true or not. We've looked into them. We've never been able to prove any of them. And so it may have just been urban legends, pardon the pun.
Literally.
But, yeah. But if like half of it is true, if a quarter of it's true, holy crap. So
yeah,
that's the thing.
I'm not going to disparage another media entity, but I got to tell you, the Untold series, when they dropped the Swamp Kings trailer for Netflix, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the most incredible thing ever. And then they showed Urban was in it. I was like, oh, this sucks. I was like the second I knew he was in it, it was over.
Untold has largely been told. So
yeah, and Untold has had a few really good ones. But
I thought the Johnny Manziel one, I thought he was pretty forthcoming.
I hated that one.
He said stuff that we hadn't heard him say before, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, he did say stuff that he hadn't said before, but the thing that irked me about it was you can't have a 2-hour documentary about substance abuse while drinking beer.
This is true.
Like that was just like, it's like, how serious are you taking this? And if you really were at the point in which you said you were at, like, this isn't a healthy situation. But yeah, I do think that it was funny that he created that rumor that his family was independently wealthy. Because when I was a beat writer in Ohio at the time, and like Johnny Football Mania, when that happened, was like, we were watching it on TV like everybody else, and everyone's like, yeah, this guy's going out to Vegas and partying with Drake and all this stuff. And it's like, yes, like we thought in Ohio as reporters that his parents were oil barons. So like that like actually worked.
Yeah, they did a great job of that. And like, so I met his parents when I was doing the SI story. So you knew they weren't super rich, but they had some money. They like the one thing that I thought was amazing is they bought an old Alabama tour bus, not the school, the band Alabama. So it'll play me some mountain music like grandma and grandpa used to play. They bought one of their old tour buses to fit it out to go to the road games. I don't know if they ever finished fixing it up, but I'm just imagining like this old Alabama tour bus rolling through all these SEC towns.
It's kind of crazy to think like when we walk into stadiums, and like you see, there was one bus at Ohio State games when I was on the beat. There was an old ambulance, and I think you might have seen it when we went to the
I've seen it. Yep.
Here. And they open up the back, and there's TVs mounted on all sides of it. The thing's completely renovated, new paint job, like the Buckeye decals on the side. It's painted like a helmet. And it's like, as I get older and I'm doing things in my house and trying to buy things in my personal life that I want, and you start to figure out how expensive stuff is, you get a real appreciation for how much money these people are sinking into this stuff. Because he had to have spent 100 or 150 G's on that thing, right? Like, yeah. I mean, like, to renovate that thing. By the way, huge news in the Wasserman household. I've been talking to you about this for 3 years, but I officially have the green light from my beautiful wife to pursue and buy a mid-90s to early 2000s SL 500. Like I am like on the hunt now. And
would you trade it to me for this Puka Nacua Panini America number to 10?
The car? Probably not the car.
If I pull a Caitlin Clark auto out of a Prism pack.
I mean, the only thing with me is if the card is worth more than the product, like it's just dollars and cents.
That's the thing. You could maybe get a better version of the SL.
Yeah. So I was on a Bring a Trailer last night, and I was the winning bidder on one of the cars until like the last minute, and I got sniped. But if you have a R129 body style Mercedes SL 500 that you'd like to sell, email me because I'm in the market, baby. All right. Anyway.
All right. Well, I just mentioned our friends at Panini America, so let's talk about that. We got this Puka Nacua card that I'm still deciding whether I'm going to let Ari trade me for it or I'm going to go send it to PSA and get it graded.
If you give it to me.
Also, we ripped this. I pulled this out of a pack yesterday on the show. This is a Harold Miner autograph. to 149 from the Prism basketball draft picks product. The thing that I love about this, because Ari likes the action. Ari likes the action of the trading, what the value is. I love the nostalgia because it brings me back to when I was 9-10 years old, ripping packs every freaking day, hanging out in baseball card shops. And like Baby Jordan here was a huge deal when I was in middle school. Huge deal. And so to get like Baby Jordan signed this freaking card. Like that's a huge deal to me because part of what I love about this is the nostalgia. So I feel like I'm back in middle school.
Well, the thing that's interesting about the hobby is that there's ways everybody can do it. If you want to spend big money, there's a market there for you. If you want to collect your favorite players and just have them, it's perfect. And if you want to be in the buy, sell, trade, gamble world with me, that's there too. Now, the thing that I think is interesting is, you go to memorabilia stores in the mall and, people will pay, $1,000 for a signed helmet or something, and like next year when Cam Scattaboo comes out with cards and, they have the product, National Treasures collegiate draft picks next year, which we'll probably rip on the show. Hopefully, they're still with us. There's going to be a Cam Scattaboo bowl patch rookie autograph that they're going to have as he, goes into the NFL. And it's like, if you're an Arizona State fan, there's no better way to commemorate that memory than having like that. To me is a cooler piece of memorabilia than like him signing a helmet, because you'll have a piece of the patch. It'll be the exact game that he starred in. He'll have his auto on it. And like the thing that I've thought about buying is like they have frames that are bigger that you can like display your cards in. So like you can make them art in your office too, much like you would with a jersey or a helmet or something. So like it's a very versatile hobby and one that completely has its hooks sunk. They're in my rib cage. So however you want to do it, you can do it. But there's a big wide world out there, and if you're in Dallas, you want to go to the card show, hit me up, man.
So one more thing before we get to your storylines for 2025. And I have a few suggestions for storylines as well.
Yeah.
You may have noticed Ari's wearing the Rhoback hoodie, the performance hoodie, one of my favorite items of clothing. I, however, am wearing the Rhoback huddle hoodie. So Rhoback is back with us. Looking behind the curtain, I actually got this a couple months ago. This is the most comfortable piece of clothing I own. I talk about how people would steal my performance hoodies. No one is allowed to steal my huddle hoodie. I've seen my daughter eyeballing it in the closet. She's not allowed to touch it. The huddle hoodie is the best thing Rhoback has made so far, and they've made some pretty amazing things. Hoodies, polos, Q-zips. The joggers are amazing now. They're buttery soft. I think butterfeel is the term they're using, but they're incredible. Use the code Andy and you get 20% off your first order at rhoback.com. That's RHOBACK.com. The huddle hoodie, I'm telling you right now, it's like wearing your bedding. Like you feel like you are just snuggled up. It's incredible. They should have called it the snuggle hoodie, but I realize that probably would have not. It is targeted at mostly men, and it sounds a little bit like Snuggie, but that's kind of how it goes. The huddle hoodie is the best. So Rhoback.com.
This is like a golf shirt, but long sleeve with a hood.
Yes.
It's super, super, super comfortable.
Oh, I wear those everywhere. There are very few occasions where you cannot rock your Rhoback performance hoodie. So
it's a perfect thing too to wear in the house, like when you're just lounging too.
Oh yeah. RHOBACK, ultimate comfort. Hoodies, polos, Q-zips, joggers, you name it. Use the code Andy for 20% off your first order. Okay. So, Ari, you had this column earlier this week, and I thought it was great. Storylines to follow for the 2025 season. You read it at on3.com. I am very intrigued by some of these, but I also have some suggestions. Some ones that I think, because here's what I'm thinking about as I read it, is what's going to be the thing that when we look back this time next year was the dominant overarching story of the season. I'd say in the case of the 2024 season, it was Ohio State losing to Michigan and then coming back and ripping through the playoff. The year before, it was the Connor Stallions thing. Like, there's always something that just dominates our attention. And your number one, I think, has all the ingredients to do it. And that's Arch Manning.
Yeah. And like the thing about that too is it's like I think you could even put Ashton Genty's season into that mix a little bit too. We spoke a lot,
especially
about
early.
That. Yeah. You know, that is, and maybe one of the storylines should have just been like a player who comes out of nowhere to dominate. But the Arch Manning thing is a continuation of the highest hyped, most paid attention to recruitment in the history of recruiting. Right. Like, I don't know if anybody, AI couldn't come up with a more perfect 5-star quarterback who comes from the royalty. Like, it's just perfect. Right. And now he's at Texas. Texas has taken a step forward the last 2 years with Quinn Ewers at the helm. He's played some, but not a ton. If he is what he was rated as, the number one overall player in the country, and then combines the greatness from his uncles to the mix at Texas, like, there is no bigger story. Now, here's the thing about Arch Manning. If he stinks, which I don't think is going to happen, I think that's a very low probability of that, or is just fine, that's also a pretty important story, right? Like, I mean, he is, right. I mean, I think he is going to be the face of the sport next year. But if he isn't, the discussion about why he's not is going to be. So, like, that to me, like, you can't miss with this. Like, Arch Manning is the most, and I don't know, they weren't really ranked. They were just 10. That was number one. But that's the first thing that pops into your head of, like, what are you looking forward to next year? Arch Manning. What's that going to be?
Well, and that's what I'm curious about is if you mentioned, I don't think he's going to stink. But you mentioned, what if he's just fine? And what if Texas isn't? Because you and I put Texas number one on our way too early top 25. What if Texas isn't the best team in the country? What if they are a pretty good team, maybe a fringe playoff team? Here's their schedule. They obviously started Ohio State, so that's bigger than big. They got to go to Florida. We think Florida's going to be better. We think Oklahoma's going to be better. We're not sure. They obviously have to go to Georgia late in the season, and then Texas A&M comes to them. But I am fascinated by it. If he's just okay, I think that the general public's going to be like, wow, he stinks. No, it's just there's been so much heaped upon him that if he is not a superstar, it's going to feel like a disappointment.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at the actual guys on the roster with him, that it's going to be very hard, even if he's average, to be bad, right? Like, but the question is what if he's just like Quinn Ewers, where he's has his moments, but like isn't transcendently different, you know? Because I think that would be the disappointment. What we're hoping for, or what we're expecting in a lot of cases, is stardom. Was Quinn Ewers a star?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think he was a good player on a really good team. Is that a fair assessment of Quinn Ewers as a college player?
Yeah, he was I think above average player on a really good team.
Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, because the buzz coming out of the combine was that maybe Quinn Ewers is a little underrated.
But here's the thing, here's the thing too. Like, I'm happy that you brought that up, because I've struggled with Ewers. And now that we know that he's played really injured last year, that kind of changes the perspective a little bit too, right? Because he was, what was it? Did he have a torn ligament in his side or arm or something?
We knew, and we knew he was injured there because he missed 2 games because of it. But
like, he played hurt.
We didn't know about the lingering effects of it. Yeah,
he played hurt through the stretch of the season and took them to the semifinals. Now, here's the thing about Texas, and I have a hard time with this because I wrote that if you put yourself back to where Texas was, or what Texas was when Quinn Ewers transferred there and when he was committed there, very short stint at Ohio State in between, they weren't this. And I think the major difference wasn't Quinn Ewers' emergence as a star. The difference was that Sark recruited his ass off, and they have stockpiled talent the way that a legitimate national championship stockpile or championship contending team stockpiles talent. So I think Sark gets the lion's share of the credit for what he's built there. But also, too, Texas being back was a jab and a joke. But being back isn't about having one good year. Being back is about being a national championship contender and not a joke year over year over year, which is what they're built to do. And Quinn Ewers was the quarterback that brought that back. So, to me, that is a really good accomplishment. And if he played hurt last year, like maybe he'll be a really good pro in the NFL. I don't know. Like, I don't know that I feel the thing that scares me about Quinn, and I didn't see a Quinn Ewers discussion happening today, but we're talking about Texas and Arch, is he's incessantly injured. So like, I don't think that you can take, there are just certain people whose bodies can't hold up. And I would be afraid to draft
the Tua
him.
question.
Right. Well, Tua's is different because Tua's got a concussion issue, which is
but Tua had multiple injuries in college too. He had the ankle injury, and then he had the hip
career
injury.
Might come to an end here because if he takes one more shot like that, he's either got to learn to protect himself better or what. But he can't take a hit like that again. We were on the road together when it happened. Do you remember where we ate Outback?
We were in Vegas.
No, we were at Outback Steakhouse.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes. Oh, yeah. The Thursday night game. You're right.
And he was on my fantasy team, and I wanted to cry. Yeah. He slid forward and took a shot to. Anyway.
Yep.
But Quinn Ewers has been injured every year. Like he gets injured all the time. So like in terms of like him being a first round draft pick, I don't think that you can take him in the first round because of just that reality alone. But like, do you feel immeasurably better about Shedeur Sanders' proposition of being a franchise quarterback in the NFL than you do Quinn? Like, I have questions about that. He might be a top 7 pick. So
even the guys that you are sure are going to go in the top 10, which would be Cam and Shedeur, you have questions about. Which, look, it's the NFL. Like the transition from college to the NFL, like quarterback, is the hardest one to make, and you just don't know. But the transition from backup to starter for Arch Manning at Texas, we've at least seen him start a couple of games, but now we're going to see him play like right out of the gate against elite talent with Ohio State. Now, this is it'll be a completely rebuilt Ohio State defense with a new coordinator. So there'll be questions all around, but I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it.
Their underdogs right now is insane because just roster makeup alone, I think Texas is better at the moment.
So one of your other storylines to watch is Ohio State's Michigan problem, which is a huge storyline because obviously they've lost a bunch in a row to Michigan. This is kind of the reverse mirror of the funhouse mirror version of Ohio State's dominance over Michigan for all those years before this. And it's interesting because this will kind of loom over the season as those two come at each other. But I want to throw another potential storyline at you that I think we'll be able to talk about and we'll really be able to dig into as the early season progresses. And that is the idea of Michigan truly being Sharon Moore's team now. And what does it look like if they have a functional offense?
Yeah, so like so this is just a personal preference. I don't know if you would have done this this story if you would have had that on your list at all, and it was towards the bottom, because it does seem a little bit less important as a result of like they won the national title and Ryan Day's not in hot water. Like the hype and the excitement towards that game when a coach is coaching for his job.
Ari, I'm still fascinated by that game.
Yeah. So
like
my theory on it,
because I want to see him play again because I still can't understand how what happened last year happened.
Yeah, and like Michigan's going to be better, and it's on the road next year, and Ohio State's not going to be nearly as good. So like that, I still think Ohio State's going to be excellent, but they're not going to be what they were last year.
Like Michigan, it'll be a better version of Michigan than the one that beat this Ohio State team, and probably a worse version of Ohio State than the one that lost to this Michigan team.
In Ann Arbor.
In Ann Arbor. Yeah, so I'm fascinated by this game, but I'm equally fascinated by what this Michigan team looks like. Because so Wink Martindale talked yesterday in Ann Arbor. I was reading Chris Ballas' story at the Wolverine, and I didn't think they were going to get Wink Martindale back. I just assumed he was going to the NFL again, but he's back, and he was great down the stretch last year as their defensive coordinator. And if you look at like how he coached the guys who were the backups in the bowl game against Alabama, who are going to be the starters, like I got very few doubts about their defense, even though they're losing some incredible talent. But I'm really interested to see what their offense looks like. Like, is it Mikey Keene starting at quarterback, holding a place for Bryce Underwood, or is Bryce Underwood come in and play right away? Like, what happens there?
Yeah, right. And like, is Michigan in the playoff again next year? Because like there is a really interesting thought process of like Sharon Moore and his year going into the year. Like, I think they need to have a good year because it got off to a tough start. But I also was very impressed by the way Michigan finished their season from a culture standpoint, and that's what makes Michigan Michigan. So like that game in general, like I don't know, like no one's going to lose their job if they lose. But if Ohio State can get over the hump and finally fix the one major issue that is looming over the program, even in the face of a national title, I think is interesting.
Does Michigan come into that game in a much better place though? Is the biggest question, and that's where I'm at. Obviously, they got to go play Oklahoma in week 2, so that'll give us some info on Michigan and Oklahoma, though, that we won't exactly know because they've got to show us against other teams what they can do as well.
I'm going to pop up to that one, by the way.
I think you should. Maybe I go with you. Maybe I'll tag along. And then you start the Big Ten schedule with at Nebraska, Wisconsin, at USC, Washington. Like, that's not going to be easy. Like, I think Nebraska is going to be pretty good. I think USC has a chance to be pretty good. I think Washington's going to be quite a bit better than it was last year.
There isn't a single team on that schedule they can't beat.
No, they could. If the offense is good, then there's a very real chance we're talking about them being 11-0 or 10-1 going into the Ohio State game.
And if that happens, then, oh boy, Washington is maybe a sleeper team.
Yeah.
And like,
but they get Washington at home. Washington was much tougher in Seattle last year than they were elsewhere.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like sleeper teams, like Washington. Who are the like 5 teams that no one's talking about right now that might be really good next year? Like, I think Washington is one of them. So
Washington's one of them. We've talked about Illinois to death, so I don't think they count. I think everybody knows about them.
I'd put you on the spot. You don't have to answer that right now, but that might be a pretty fun story to look into.
Yeah. Well, producer River points out maybe one of them is Oklahoma.
I think that would be another one, and they play each other. So, is Michigan a sleeper team? Because we don't talk about Michigan much.
But are they really a sleeper if we look at their schedule and say they might be 10-1 going to the Ohio State game? I don't think they're a sleeper at that point.
I think a sleeper means who's dominating the offseason discourse. When you think about how much we've spoken about South Carolina in relation to Michigan, like it's not even close. It's 10-1, right? Like Michigan
is excited about South Carolina's quarterback. We're excited about Florida's quarterback.
Shouldn't we be excited about Auburn's potential of Michigan having quarterback Underwood? Like, that's exciting.
Yeah, I know, but we don't know. We don't even know if he's going to start or play.
I think that Michigan falls under sleeper right now.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
And I think Oklahoma
and
does.
That's why I brought him up.
I mean, I think this is the perfect segue to the next storyline, Andy, because my next storyline is DJ Lagway versus Lenore's Sellers. And I really can't stand that they're not playing each other this year. That really sucks. I was hoping that Florida and South Carolina
it would be so awesome. But it's interesting that it's come I don't know why it's these one versus the other, because where's Garrett Nussmeier in all this? Where are some of the other Nico Iamaleava? Like, where are these guys in all this discourse as well?
LSU. I was talking to Cody Belair, one of our 2 main talent evaluators, and he said LSU could be a wagon next year. Don't talk about LSU enough. Yeah. We had a whole episode actually.
LSU did work in the portal. They bring back one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Like, yeah. So it's interesting because the Lagway Sellers thing, and you and I were texting about this the other day.
Yesterday.
We both think South Carolina and Florida are going to be better and good. The thing about it is we also think Auburn's going to be better. Like, if that's the case, somebody has to get worse for those 3 to get better. So I think one of those teams, at least, that we think is going to be better is not going to live up to our expectations.
So this is this might be the time. but we did talk about this. Florida's season win total is 6.5. South Carolina's is 7.5. And I have to study their schedules. Maybe River can help me out. Mr. Schedule.
Both schedules are hard.
Them up here.
Yep.
Is there an extra game that Florida plays that South Carolina doesn't? South Carolina has Clemson and Florida has Florida State. We don't know if Florida State's going to be, and Florida also has Miami in the non-conference. So I think that it's possible that, like, who does South Carolina have in the non-conference at the beginning of the year?
Virginia Tech and Clemson.
Okay. So, like, South Carolina being, well, I think Virginia Tech should be a game that they win. I think Florida has one extra non-conference game that's difficult that they could lose theoretically.
No, they have this. Yeah, maybe, but I mean, Florida State's coming off 2-10. Are we counting Florida State as a team that? It's
a rivalry situation too. I don't know. Like, maybe not. Maybe not. So if you think the schedules are a wash, which I think is a fair argument.
Well, no. Let me ask you this, because we talked about this for Friday, where we're going to talk about the hardest and easiest schedules, and I started working on this last night. And Florida and South Carolina schedules were one that, like, now obviously we can put them both on the list of hard schedules because they're both very hard. I think South Carolina might be harder than Florida's.
That's interesting.
I don't know.
So, like, I haven't gotten any, like, actual strays to the dome this year in terms of, like, my position. But if you've looked at anything I've written in the offseason, anytime that there was a chance to glorify a quarterback, like, I have put DJ Lagway over Lenora Sellers. Now, that's not a point of I think Lenora Sellers stinks or that he doesn't have potential to the roof or that he cannot be a star. I mean, look at what they did in this back half of the schedule last year while he was healthy. Things were great. I am very, very high on Florida and DJ Lagway going into the year because, and like, again, Lenora Sellers is also a freak, but like DJ Lagway looks like somebody who is going to be the first pick in the NFL draft one day. Like, and I don't know if I'm overstating my obsession with his upside, but that's real. And like, I don't know if this is going to be a season bet going into it, but who do you think is going to have a better year?
Which quarterback numerically will have a better year?
Team? And maybe the quarterback drives that. But like, I would.
Well, if you look at it, we basically predicted them to have the same year. We basically predicted them to be 10-2, both of them.
But one of them's not going to be. They're not both going to be 10-2. So who do you think is more likely?
I honestly, I think it comes down to the differences in their schedule, or how they play against the common opponents. Like, last year, South Carolina lost to LSU and lost to Ole Miss. Now, a lot of that was because Sellers hurts his ankle at the end of the first half of the LSU game. He's still limited when they play Ole Miss. Like, how they play against LSU and Ole Miss will matter. Florida beat both those teams last year. Like, and does Florida do that again? Like, can Florida go into Baton Rouge in week 3 and beat LSU? I don't know. So,
but there have been people who have said, I don't understand why Lenora Sellers is not getting as much hype as DJ Lagway. And I think it's a fair question. I'm telling you, from my standpoint, I'm obsessed with DJ Lagway. But I would also put my own personal money on the fact that Florida will have a better year than South Carolina next year.
Here's why I think it is. So Lenora Sellers was working with a pretty good team already. And we understood that it was a pretty good team. And we watched them we know why they lost to LSU. They should not have lost to Alabama. They should have won that game at Alabama. And they beat Clemson. They killed Texas A&M. We knew what he was working with. We watched that Florida team look really bad early in the season. And then when DJ Lagway was their starting quarterback, they looked much better. So it feels like Lagway is the main difference. Now, it might not be that he is. It might be that Florida's offensive line got better progressively through the year. Florida's defensive line got better progressively through the year. And so coincidentally, when DJ was the starting quarterback, those groups were good and they played differently than they played against Texas A&M and Miami. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much of that was DJ starting and kind of pulling everybody along. We're going to find out this year because he will be the starting quarterback the whole year. Like, they go to LSU week 3, they go to Miami week 4. Like, we will know very quickly.
Who do you think has more help?
What we're looking at?
Because I see people are like, yeah, well, Florida's more talented. It's like,
are they?
South Carolina's got a really, really good team. So I don't know if that's like a blanket statement you can just toss out there. I mean, typically and historically they have been. I don't know if that's true this year.
I don't know if that's true either. I mean, I saw somebody in the chat say, didn't South Carolina lose their edges? They lost Kyle Kennard, but they brought back Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart's the higher ceiling of those two.
Florida's going to be counting on some freshman receivers this year, I think. And that's kind of a tough, we don't know which way they're going to go type scenario. But Florida does have a very, very good running back. I think their offensive line was improved. They've got the best center in college football. Their defensive line, I thought, got better as the year went on. Like, I think Florida's going to be really good next year. I don't know. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good enough to beat everybody on their schedule. They won't.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're a playoff team because, again, the schedule is hard. And look, you lose to Texas, LSU, and Georgia. Which means you beat Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Miami. Like, you're still probably not a playoff team. If you're 9-3 with losses to LSU, Texas, and Georgia, you've won some really good games, but you're not a playoff team. Now, I don't think anybody's getting fired over that. I think they're probably like, okay, we get it. It's fine. But that's the reality of the situation. It's a hard schedule.
Yeah. So, but watching those two play, because they're in the same conference and the same, experience level, though I think Sellers has more playing time. It's going to be kind of like a Lagway versus Sellers debate that's already starting to happen. And I think
I don't understand, because Arch is in the same conference and Nico's in the same conference and Nussmeier's in the same conference. And so like who's the best quarterback in the SEC conversation is much more than those two guys.
Who do you take right now going into next year?
If it's weird because I'm going to seem like the biggest homer in the world. Like DJ, here's how you need to know I've been mystified by DJ Lagway. Like, I went from being overly negative about everything Florida to probably overly positive about everything Florida because this guy just feels different.
It's like, do you take the bird in the hand? Because Nussmeier's already really good. Like, you just could take Nussmeier and know what you're going to get.
But I've also seen DJ Lagway play head-to-head with Garrett Nussmeier.
You won take the game. Lagway over Arch.
Right now, yeah.
That's going to be fun. Maybe I should have had 4-headed quarterback monster as a storyline, but that's going to be great.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Did you think that we had star power in college football last year? Like, we had Travis Hunter, and he was a pretty big star, and
but Colorado wasn't in the national. Like, you need somebody. Now, Colorado's in the playoff hunt toward the end of the season, so that helped. But you need somebody who's in, like, feeling very much in the playoff. Like one of these quarterbacks or a couple of these quarterbacks. Or you mentioned, like, let's say Bryce Underwood starts for Michigan, and they are rolling toward double-digit wins heading into the Ohio State game. Like, that's going to be massive.
Do you think that there's been a star power problem in college football the last year or so? Or is it just a contrived story in my head?
I just don't think there were a lot of elite quarterbacks. And you can always tell by looking at the NFL draft. The years where the NFL draft has like 6 guys who are going to go in the first round, you feel like there's more stars.
I mean, the year before they had Drake May, but I don't know if Drake May was a huge quarterback. Jaden Daniels.
There were 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 in the last draft.
Yeah. But who are the 6 again? So Jaden Daniels, who's obviously very
Caleb
good.
Williams.
On the Heisman. Caleb Williams. Yeah. So last year there was
Bo
a
Nix,
huge drop off in
Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, right. And JJ McCarthy. So maybe that's a column. Like, I was just thinking, like, we have a chance to get star power back next year. And like, the fun thing about this year going into it, though, is that the star power that we have a chance to get is largely unproven. Like, we don't know what they're going to be. Right. So the intrigue of going into the year, not knowing who it's going to be and watching that play out is also very entertaining. So, yeah.
Right. And now the thing about Lagway is he's the one who has to be back in college football in 2026. All these other guys can go pro. So
right.
That's where, like, he has a chance to really kind of build that up. The other guys, like, Arch is going to be a supernova if he's even the least bit good. And then if Nussmeier's good and LSU's good, we're going to be concentrating on that.
Because even with Quinn Ewers last year, people forget Quinn Ewers was like the highest rated quarterback prospect of all time. And I think
what about Nico? Like, what if Nico's better at Tennessee? Like, he's a potential, big star in college football.
Yeah. It's electric.
Oh, it's going to be great. One more you didn't have that I think is interesting, mostly because of what we've been talking about the rest of the week off the field. Florida State is coming off 2-10 a year after they went 13-1. Do they just go into the middle of those extremes and they're just a mid team, or like, do they bounce back in a big way? Because I'm fascinated by this, especially now that we know kind of what they're playing for here. And it's not necessarily what they're playing for this year. Like, they can't be 2-10 the next 4 years and expect to get what they want from a conference alignment standpoint. Like, they got to get good again.
Yeah. I think that they're probably just going to be a 6-6 team next year, and it's not going to be a dumpster fire, but it's not going to be amazing, and it's just going to kind of be like blah.
It's
is
so crazy to me.
To you, or do you think 6-6 is like another dumpster fire? Like, because like on one hand you can say, well, they got better from the year before, but then on the other hand, it's like they're Florida State. How do they go 6-6?
Yeah, if Florida State 6-6, their fan base is up in arms. Like, they're wanting to raise the money to fire Mike Norvell at that point, which would be an obscene amount of money. And I still don't know if you can do it.
And like Thomas Castellanos is their quarterback this year, right? So you're putting a lot on him.
On a guy who got benched at Boston College.
Yeah. But they also have Squirrel White. Sorry, I'm having a hard time pronouncing it.
Who was not a star at Tennessee. Like that. But you're not helping here.
He was pretty productive, right? Like, he was a pretty good player. And then they got Deuce Robinson. That's a pretty big one.
Was he big at USC?
Deuce Robinson is going to be a long-time NFL player. Like, I don't know if he'll get the production.
Okay, but was he very productive at USC?
No, he was
on a team that went 7-5.
He was not.
Okay, so that's the thing. Now, look, Mike Norvell has had success with guys who weren't productive at other schools before, like Johnny Wilson, not productive at Arizona State, highly productive at Florida State. So it's definitely possible that happens. But what we're hoping here is that the same magic that happened in 2023 and in a lesser degree in 2022, like that happens over what happened in 2024.
Yeah, but the magic that happened years ago was so predicated on lightning in a bottle. That was like, you can't duplicate that. Like Jared Vert, all those transfers that came in, it was insane. And they all were awesome at the same time.
Well, right. And Jared Vert staying and then Braden Fisk coming to be united with Jared Vert. Like that. Think about that. Like Florida State had half the LA Rams defensive line.
Yeah,
on their defensive line.
It's like Jordan Travis might have been an underappreciated player, but at the same
time, Jordan Travis might have been the most important player in college football to his team in the past 50 years.
Electric, like no, he doesn't like. We don't talk about him like he was a legend. Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson on the same team, like they had. Wasn't Trey Benson their running back? They were really good, and they were all transfers at the same time. This year is interesting because I think that they have a lot of really high upside players in their offense. Like Hakeem Williams was a former 5-star prospect. Like if he turns out to be what people thought he was going to be in high school, that's a really, really good receiver. Castellanos got benched, but also too, he showed flashes of excellence during his time at BC. Squirrel White, I think, is a serviceable player. Deuce Robinson, another high ceiling guy who hasn't been productive. Like if Deuce Robinson and Hakeem Williams and Castellanos all hit their ceiling next year, they could be really good.
Yes, they could. And season opener against Alabama.
Electric.
At Doak Campbell.
Could you imagine if Florida State beat Bama in the first game?
That's what I was about to say. The Feinbaum show the following Monday would be just nuclear. Absolutely nuclear. If Florida State coming off 2-10 beat Alabama right out of the gate. Now, it might not be as bad as the Alabama fans would be making it at that point, because Florida State might turn out to be good. That's the thing. If Florida State can get through that game, they have a manageable front half of the season. Now, they do have to go to Miami, and they got to go to Clemson, and they got to go to Florida. So the problem is all their hard games are on the road, except for Alabama. And so even if you're better, it might not show up as well as you'd like.
Yeah.
But if they can win one of those games, I think they'll be feeling pretty good. But yes, if they beat Alabama out of the chute, holy crap, it will feel like the world is ending in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. Whew.
It's fun. This is gonna be a fun season. Digging into the schedules for the Friday show has been very interesting to me, just to see.
I gotta help you with that today.
Like, there's some sneaky fun games. Hey, let me throw one sneaky fun game at you that I had not realized was happening.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah.
Before you do that, can I just wrap up the last thing by saying a few more storylines? But then I want to hear the schedule. We're going to come back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you started doing this, but the college football playoff
season ties into your story. One of your storylines. This is my sneaky fun game.
College football playoff seeding is just going to be fun to track the next month or two. Oklahoma, they're going to have a rebound year, because I think that Oklahoma is very interesting. Brent Venables and John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, and of course Nagy, who they just brought in, to run the GM role. Deion Sanders and Colorado's next move, right? Like, they were a hyper huge story, and I'm sure that this is
what I'm talking about. The sneaky fun game. You ready? Week 1, Georgia Tech at Colorado.
Yeah. Like the new look Colorado. It's like we have spent not much time talking about Colorado this offseason. You maybe even can throw them in the sleeper thing. But they're supposed to be the thing that is interesting about Colorado is last year they were much better than we anticipated they would be. And when I say we, I mean collectively, outside of anybody who reads DNRV.com or whatever that website's called. So they pegged it, they got it right. That was insane. But also, too, how much of that success was predicated on having 2 top 10 players in the NFL draft this coming year, and players that were kind of built in, like Louis Vuitton luggage bringovers from Jackson State, and how much can be replicated with what they've done. Because, in theory, even though you lose those 2 players in year 3 of the build now, if we're going to talk about Deion Sanders the same way we talk about other coaches, is Colorado supposed to take a step forward, or are they allowed to go 4-8 this year? And build it that way. I don't know, Colorado and what their expectations should be for this coming year is a fascinating discussion point. And I think we need to have that conversation for an entire show even.
Steve in San Antonio with a great point. Year 3, and we're going to see if Deion can really coach or not. That's really what this comes down to, is how good is this staff? And, they went and got Julian Lewis. So that's seemingly your quarterback of the future, guy who was committed to USC for a long time, big time prospect from Georgia. But I don't think they got him to start this year, because they went and got Caden Salter from Liberty.
Well, this bothers me. Wolverine scoop here in the chat. We already know he can't coach. Did you watch them play last year? They were a very well-coached team, I thought.
I think we feel like he can.
I feel like the one thing that we learned about him last year is that he unequivocally can coach.
So now, all of the people who coached Colorado before couldn't coach because he's won more games than they did.
Well, the thing, too, is when you say can't coach, does that mean on Saturdays, or does that mean being the coach of your team? Those are 2 different things. Can you be a program builder? I think he's done that. I think he's done that to a certain extent, to a great extent, considering where they were and what they became. I don't know how much of that production, because their receivers were awesome. Jimmy Horn was awesome last year. They had really good players.
Jonte Wester too. That's the other thing, is
the most underrated player in college football last year.
Yeah. That's the question, is how do they replenish their, and they have some interesting pickups. Jaheim Otis is a guy who played at Alabama the last few years. He's a defensive tackle. All of the traits that you want, but he's had injury issues.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, there's nobody like him in the Big 12. If he's not healthy, then it just works out the same way as it did. So that's the part that we've got to find out, and we don't know the answer to that. And here's the thing, and that's why I think the Georgia Tech coming to them week 1 is so interesting. Georgia Tech is a known quantity now. Like, we know Brent Key is going to have really good players on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They've got Haynes King. They've actually got a very deep quarterback room at Georgia Tech behind him. So this will be a big test for Colorado and a big test for Georgia Tech.
Yes. So moving on, and I don't know if this is a sleeper, but Clemson, are they back? They've got a really good roster. They got the best
I think
roster.
Clemson's going to be really good. I'm on board. Made it very clear. I think they're going to be a playoff team, that they probably could be a top 4 seed without the seeding rules changing.
Are they a sleeper?
I wouldn't call them a sleeper. I think a lot of us are predicting that Clemson's going to be really good and the best team in the ACC and potentially a top 3 or 4 team.
Okay. I'm with you on that. Next one, Andy, James Franklin watch. Like, are we going to get the next? I mean, they got both running backs back, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Drew Aller's coming back.
Denied Dennis Sutton.
Warren, but they denied Dennis Sutton. DDS, really, really good player on the defensive side of the ball. Like, are they going to just beat somebody that they just constantly lose to next year? And like, are they going to?
Do they go to Columbus and beat Ohio State? Like that's really it. Is because we saw James Franklin win a couple playoff games. We saw him in the thick of the semifinal game. I mean, look, if Drew Aller doesn't throw that pick when he does, it might have been Penn State and Ohio State in the national title game.
Yep.
So that's the next frontier for James Franklin, is can you go beat an Ohio State? Now, the entire front half of the season at home. By the way, this non-conference schedule, the biggest argument for a Super League. Nevada, FIU, Villanova.
Yeah. I don't want to make any arguments for the Super League, even if non-conference games.
Well, these schools keep making them for you. Like, don't schedule somebody good, for God's sake. Like, come on.
I mean, the fact they don't play Pitt every year just annoys me. Next storyline, Andy, and then we'll wrap this thing up here, and I'll put them into 2. Which teams will break out? You know, Florida, Illinois, Louisville, Auburn, Clemson, South Carolina, Kansas State, BYU, LSU, and Iowa State all come to mind. And then, of course, the next storyline, too, is stepping stone seasons. Notre Dame made the national title game. What does that mean for the stepping stone of their program? Right? Like, what does that mean next year in terms of, like, what do we expect from them? What do you need to see from Marcus Freeman out of Notre Dame next year? Another trip to the semis to say, hey, Notre Dame is real, because obviously you can't just expect that they're going to improve, because improve means winning the national title. Of course, I think Oregon is in that conversation for stepping stone seasons. Oregon has gotten better every year under Dan Lanning, but last year finished with a pretty big disappointment. Oregon's season this year and who they have and what they do, I think, is a very fascinating thing to track in terms of, like, where are Oregon fans? Are they, like, stepping into a position where they're, you know, expecting to do better than last year again? And are they better? I think LSU is in an important stepping stone position right now, because LSU, you know, they won their side of the SEC a few years ago, but has been pretty marginally disappointing the last 2 years, especially considering the fact that, you know, they wasted one of the greatest offenses we'll ever see with a really bad defense, and they've got a lot of players that did really well in the portal this year. And then lastly, and this is what I'm going to write about after the stepping stone seasons, Miami. Where's Miami next year? You know, they went out and get Carson Beck. I think that last year was disappointing in the sense that they didn't make the playoff, but they were much, much better than they had been. They're all in the right direction. I feel like, you know, maybe LSU isn't in the right direction, but the other three
is Miami in the right direction. Like, is Carson Beck a better quarterback than Cam Ward for Miami?
They're in the right direction as of right now. Like, next year, we're going to find out if they're still in the right direction. And I don't know, too. It's just like weight loss, right? When you're losing weight, for me, I'll tell you, you know, it's been a pretty steady pace down, but you have days and weeks where you're up a little. Like, is it okay in the build to go 10-2, narrowly miss the playoff, and then go 8-4 one year and still be on track? Or do you have to get better every year before you break out?
You can, yeah, there can be fits and starts, especially Because once you get to the 10-win level, like going from 10 to 11 is a hell of a lot harder than going from 7 wins to 10 wins.
I know, but if you get to 10 and then go back to 6, then it's just like
that would be a problem. And I don't think Miami's going to do that. You know, they do play Notre Dame and Florida in the non-conference.
What do they have to do in your mind to be on track still?
8 or 9 wins. I think they're fine. And then if you do better than that, that's great.
Yeah.
So they've got Notre Dame, Florida. They have to play Louisville and SMU. They miss Clemson in the regular season. And now we might see them play each other in the ACC championship game. But a lot of it is Miami's defense better. You know, they went and got Minnesota's defensive coordinator, and he was fabulous last year. Miami in 2024 is kind of a little like LSU in 2023, where the defense just crushed the offense, and you had this great offense and a defense that let it down. So if the defense is better, then the offense doesn't have to be as good as the Cam Ward version of the offense was. So we'll see. I mean, how their young receivers develop, I think will tell us a lot about how Miami winds up being.
Yeah, I'm thinking about stepping stone seasons, or like if you just like even put it in the way of like whose seasons are most important this year to the build. I think Michigan's in that position, right? Mm-hmm. They have a new coach. They had a down year last year. They're bringing in
and this is the first his first full cycle, like a real off season where he had a chance to do all of the things you can do in an off season. So Sharon Moore, we learned more about him this year, I think, than we did last year. Although I think we learned a lot about Sharon Moore at the tail end of last season, and it was good things.
There are a lot of teams in this position. I think Alabama is in that position in terms of important seasons. I think Tennessee, to a certain extent, a 10-win team last year who made the playoff and got blown out in their first game, but was a pretty good team, not a great team. What are they going to be?
Well, got blown out by the team that then blew out the number 1 seed. Like that's where I realize we are digressing like crazy here, but we're an hour and 12 minutes in.
But I also feel like this should
if you're a Tennessee fan, did you watch Ohio State do that to Oregon and go, oh well, I guess that wasn't that bad?
No, I know, but like River, come on up here and pop up and tell me what you think. Like what are Tennessee fans hoping for this year?
I mean, same thing. 10-2 playoff berth, I would say.
See, this is we need to do, because we did that LSU one where we talked about what represents success for LSU. We need to have the same show for Tennessee, because I don't get like what you said, River, and it's not so much what you said, it's the way you said it. I get this weird vibe off the Tennessee fans right now.
Well, it's just no one knows.
Right. And we had Rocky Top Tom in the chat saying he thought they might be 7-5. Now, I think that's the more extreme. I don't get that from most Tennessee fans.
The thing with Tennessee too is that they spent all this money on a quarterback, and you want a return on that. So if they go 10-2 or 9-3 next year, or miss the playoff even, and he's just fine, what's the ROI on that investment? Like I think you want them to get to the semis with Nico as their quarterback at some point, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. You got to advance.
If they miss the playoff this year, then I think you're probably looking at it like the Ole Miss folks looked at their team last year.
It's exactly what I was thinking in my head. It's like if you have Nico coming back, I don't know what their schedule looks like in 2027 or whatever year it's going to be or 2026.
We don't know because the SEC hasn't made that schedule yet.
Yeah, but 2026 Nico 3rd-year starter, like you have to get your money together and just go all in. Because like you don't want your investment to perish.
Ari,
well, Nico,
you're assuming Nico's going to be there in 2026. He's leaving after this year.
Yeah, he can bail after this year, right? I forgot. Sorry, in my head, he was a true freshman last year.
It's like that's the thing. You don't even know who Tennessee's true wide receiver 1 is at this point either. Mike Matthews, you guess,
right? And they worked hard to keep him. So that's it. Felt like Tennessee kept who they wanted to keep. I think their defensive line it was deceptively deep. Well, I mean, we knew it was deep last year, but I think it's still pretty deep, even though they lost some really good players. So they're not going to just fade into the abyss, but we don't know what they're going to be. And I think so. That's in the chat. chime in with this because I've gotten some good feedback on the LSU show we did. I definitely think we need to do a Tennessee version of it. We did the Oregon version of this. What other teams do you want the deep dive into? What teams absolutely fascinates you this year?
I'm going to write that today. I think that the teams that on that list, I think we need an Oklahoma one, and we've got people at Sooner Scoop that can come on and maybe help us out with that. And I don't know if we're too early in the offseason for that. Maybe we I mean, I don't know. You tell me.
Do we need a Georgia one, Ari?
But like that was one that I saw. Like Penn State is having an important stepping stone season. I think Georgia to a certain extent is because they were good but not great last year. Penn State has a stepping stone season. What do they do? Alabama is probably number one on the list in terms of like, are they back or are they dead? Like, this has been
and the thing is like Alabama's so skewed because of the Nick Saban era and the level of success there. What does Alabama being back mean? Because if Alabama's 10-2, they're still not back to what they were.
They have to be in the playoff next year.
Yeah,
they have to be.
Yeah, so we need to have that discussion. You know what? We need to invite some friends on who know these programs inside and out, and have that discussion with them. So I like it. This is I'm seeing the next few weeks unfolding here.
We just did a 20-minute segment on accident. We should have saved that, but we're going to do it more thoroughly.
No,
that's what happened.
No, the accidental segments of the whoopsies are the best.
Yeah, like that could be a separate, right? Like we can, stepping stone seasons or teams that are having most important seasons next year or pivotal like line in the sand seasons. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but that's what I'm going to write
in the sand season. That's some branding right there.
Do you think that's what it should be? Because I need help. Like, help me out with the headline of this
Stepping stone season. Stepping stone season is a good one because it implies that you have an upward trajectory, and if you don't have your stepping stone season, now you're falling. So that I think that might be the best branding of it. For those who don't know, yes, it's all branding. Sailor Joe, Texas Tech killed the portal, and I think this is an important season. I think you're right. Because this feels a little like, a different version of what Ole Miss did in the portal last year.
Yeah.
Do you get the return?
Yes, sir.
This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. So, yeah. By the way, tomorrow's Thursday. You know what that means. Mailbag, Dear Andy, Dear Ari. Get your questions in. Find me, Andy Staples on 3 at gmail.com or at Andy_Staples on social media. Find Ari at Ari Wasserman on social media. Ari.Wasserman at on3.com is the email address. And also, another treat for tomorrow. We are scheduled to talk to Washington coach Jed Fish. He took Ari's alma mater to some pretty big heights. He switched jobs, a bit of a rebuild in Washington last year. But if you watch the Huskies' last couple games and you're not excited about Damon Williams Jr., their new quarterback, whoo boy, get yourself to YouTube.
Andy, what is your favorite place? Because I have people working on the house today, and I don't want to be here while I'm writing. What's your favorite place to write at in public?
Good, like a good coffee shop. And not necessarily a national chain coffee shop. A good coffee shop that has really good drip coffee. I don't care about the lattes. And the occasional great pastry.
But I feel like a coffee shop is cliche. I might take it to the mall food court.
Oh, well, you can get some stuff done in the mall food court.
What's an edgy place you can take your laptop to?
The skating rink.
That's kind of weird.
I actually tried to work in a skating rink before when I brought my kids there.
Yeah, no,
not a great place to try to work. The music is very loud
around children skating, but I feel like I should try the food court, maybe the public library. I don't know, just somewhere where I could put headphones on, be left alone. But like the thing that I don't like about the library is you can't get Danish brought to you. So like,
the food court would be interesting. Like, would somebody bring you a bourbon chicken sample on a toothpick every 5 minutes? Because that sounds amazing.
I used to write at the food court in Columbus all the time. I would just like go because like the mall I used to live near in Columbus had like nice booths.
So by the way, we got 10 more minutes before JD's show starts. Can you describe your ideal mall food court sampler platter? Because we've had this discussion in private. I would like the people to hear this.
Sampler, or like what would I buy for myself for lunch?
Your dream. You have the ultimate cliche mall food court with the ultimate like there's the pizza place, there's 2 different Asian places, there's the sandwich place that does the fresh cut fries, and there's a Chick-fil-A. What are you getting?
So like the thing is that this is a fantasy and I've never actually acted it out. Okay. And I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer right now, but you know, in a weirder way. But like it's a less weird way. I would get a slice of pizza, a half a sub and fries, and a side of bourbon chicken.
You're a psychopath.
You're
an absolute psychopath.
You know what the thing is? You don't have to go to a buffet to eat at a buffet. You just have to pay more. You know, like I just like you one slice of pizza, a half a sandwich, and fries. And
because here's the thing about the food court sandwich place. The fries are the star. The fresh cut fries are the star. The sandwiches are
Yeah, like is Steak Escape still in business? Remember?
I don't know, but there's a version of that in every mall still.
Charlie's now, and by the way, Charlie's has gotten into the sample game where they've cut up a sub into 30 pieces and give you a little.
Oh yeah. I've had that.
I think that bourbon chicken is the mall food court. Like I feel like if you're like talking about Thanksgiving sides, you can't have that discussion without stuffing. Like I don't think you can talk about the mall food court without bourbon chicken.
But the thing is, you're eating your bourbon chicken with a slice of pizza, not on a slice of pizza, but with a slice of pizza and with fries. Like, I want my bourbon chicken in a pile of fried rice.
That should be the t-shirt. You don't have to go to a buffet to eat at a buffet. Anything can be a buffet.
If you have enough money.
So during this weight loss journey, I've discovered a place in Dallas called Cowboy Chicken. Not a sponsor. Wish they were. Because I used to like laugh at the notion of rotisserie chicken restaurants. I'm like, why would you make a rotisserie chicken restaurant when you can go to a grocery store and buy one for $6? Also, too, everybody
never had a Kenny Rogers Roasters chicken.
But at the same time, too, like rotisserie chicken, I've never been like, oh, what do you want for lunch? You know what? Rotisserie chicken, man. That's really hitting it for me. Like that's just like what healthy people eat out of necessity. And I went to this rotisserie chicken restaurant yesterday called Cowboy Chicken. Then I got a half chicken. Bro, it was so freaking good. And like, I'm going to go there until I get sick of it because it's like the healthiest lunch a human being can eat. Get some greens and get a half chicken. And it's like rotisserie chicken's really good when it's soft. Also, there's a Portillo's in Dallas, and they've got a great fried fish sandwich if you're ever in the market for that.
As Ari goes from healthy to unhealthy, like you vacillate between healthy and unhealthy.
Welcome to my brain, Al. Like, I don't know how people eat healthy and aren't miserable.
You're asking the wrong person. So, but if everybody wants to try the Ari food court platter, like just walk into your local mall and say, "Give me the Ari Wasserman."
See,
all the food court employees should know what that means.
And if you're like me and you have shame, you do it sneakily because you don't buy it all at once and eat it together. You get the pizza, go to the one side of the food court, eat it. Then go to the sandwich shop, eat that in another spot. And you do it. You
sound like my dog. Like my dog has corners where she eats particular treats.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how much shame you have. If you want to sit down at a mall food court table and have what I just described in front of you, you would either be looked at as a hero or ridiculed, depending on who walked by. But also, too, got to know this about you, and then we got to go because JD's coming on. Wetzel's Auntie Anne's. Where are you at? What team are you on?
Auntie Anne's, all the way.
You're wrong.
I love my friend Dan Wetzel, but I don't think he gets a nickel from those pretzels. So Auntie Anne's it is.
Kills Auntie Anne's.
Wait. Before we also, none of these are sponsors. We're past that point here. The best cinnamon sugar pretzel going, neither one. Sam's Club, 98 cents.
Well, I don't order that ever. I get
bigger and better.
I'm a psychopath. I'll get the pepperoni pretzel and I'll dip it into honey mustard. You can end this now if you want me to stop traumatizing people, but
that is disgusting. I'm normally with you on everything, but that is disgusting.
I think honey mustard
the end of the
is
show.
the best dip out there.
Washington coach Jed Fish and your questions tomorrow. Talk to you then.